All right, welcome back, everyone, to our podcast, Secret Society of Man. I'm Ryan, and I'm here with my cousin, Zach. And today for you, we have some awesome stories to talk about. So the first one we're going to lead into today is Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban is a billionaire with a B. He is partial owner of the Dallas Mavericks NBA team. He's on Shark Tank. He has a ton of exposure and a ton of pull, okay? Guy's got cash. All right, so Mark Cuban recently came out and is endorsing Kamala Harris for her election coming up here in November. And basically, he really said, like, hey, you know, she is the person that I want to see in the office. You know, her plan of what I want is what I want to endorse as a billionaire. Now, this is going to be something I'm going to ask you further on down the road because I'm curious. What are your thoughts of a billionaire endorsing Kamala Harris? What's your thoughts on that?
We have Elon Musk, who is siding with Trump, and he made a public statement about how he switched sides, years ago now. But now he's touring with Trump and making similar speeches. He's talking about immigration and things like that. That sound very weird coming out of his mouth, right? Especially since he's nowhere near of a good speaker compared to Mark Cuban, who sounds great speaking. He's very charismatic, whereas Elon Musk just isn't. But then now you have Mark Cuban with Kamala Harris, and it's interesting seeing all these personalities come together. It's like the Avengers versus the Justice League, because it's like on one side you got Kamala Harris and Mark Cuban and Megan Thee Stallion, and then Trump's side you have Donald Trump and Elon Musk and Sexy Red, right? And they get to battle it out.
Yeah. And Kanye, don't forget Kanye.
Oh yeah, Kanye too. So you have, and Taylor Swift is with Kamala Harris, so you have a lot of people coming out, all these personalities, and people really like to align themselves with these different famous people. But I was thinking about how politicians are very influential, powerful people, especially ones running for president. Donald Trump was the president, the most powerful person in the world. But then you also have billionaires who are extremely powerful in their own right because of the sheer amount of resources and influence that they have. But politicians, I think, are viewed kind of negatively, where I think a lot of people don't really like any of them. We're kind of having to choose between two evils. Nobody really, I don't really love Trump and I don't love Kamala Harris. And I think a lot of people feel that way. Nobody hates Warren Buffett, right? So there's a more positive view. But why is that? Why are billionaires such celebrities? Because they're not relatable. Nobody that is a billionaire is relatable. Nobody that has $1,000 million is relatable.
Well, I feel like, so I know, and we'll get back to Mark Cuban here in a second, but the Elon Musk thing, I do know there was a lot of ripples from when he bought Twitter, which is now X, because Elon Musk is very much about free speech. He doesn't believe there is no hate speech. There is none of that. Free speech is free speech. You say what you want on the platform. Now, I know there's been, in the past, he's gotten some flack because he has banned certain countries or people or organizations that want to speak on his platform, and he didn't allow it. So it's kind of it's kind of the point of free speech, right? You let people have the platform regardless, right? Anyway, so in the CBS article I read from this, Bryan Cranston, do you know who he is? Okay. Also endorsed Kamala Harris. And basically, he went to Arizona to do his own speech, I guess, on her. But what I found interesting in the article, though, is he didn't really endorse Kamala as much as Mark Cuban did. Bryan Cranston was what's more important is you just go out and vote, not just about the person you're voting for. Yeah. So it's kind of okay, well, are you for her, or are you just kind of go out and do your thing? I don't know if he just didn't want to get in the muddy waters of it or whatever. Now, here's what I wanted to bring up, and we talked about this off the camera here. Now, do you know what unrealized tax gains are? Do you know what those are?
Yes.
Okay. So, in Biden's 2025 tax plan, he wants to tax, I believe it was up to 20 or 25% of your unrealized tax gains. So Kamala aligned with that plan. People asked Mark Cuban, what's the deal with this? Now, Mark Cuban went to her, supposedly, talked to Kamala and said, you understand that that's an economy killer. That's what it said. I put it in parentheses, an economy killer if that happens. And he is claiming she's not going to follow through on that. And he even said straight up, if she does do it, he said, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure she never gets reelected again. So here's the problem with that. She has 4 years.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, if I have this gun in my hand, if it goes off and I shoot you, sorry. But, let's test it out. No, let's not do that. Like, how about we, that's concerning to me. That's like, understand, I read up on this unrealized tax gains. I don't know how much you know about it. But essentially it's like, if I'm in stocks and I get $300 from my stocks, that is taxed already before I even take that as income. Like, they take money out of those earnings before I even get to pocket it. So even if I want to keep it in there and not take it as income, they're still taking taxes out of that all the time. Is that correct?
Yeah, the one thing I don't know is then if you go to sell it, do you get taxed again on it?
Yes. That would be part of the tax plan. So you get taxed twice on that.
I mean, I think I wish that I had done more research on that specific thing before the podcast, but I remember looking into it a little bit, and I think people compared it to housing, because even though I don't sell my house, I still have to pay taxes on it every year.
Yep.
And that is like an essential part of like local government income. A big part of like a county's income is the taxes everybody pays on their house. And every year there is a tax assessor that comes and sees, like, if I invest money into my house and I finish my basement and now there's more square footage and it's worth more, part of pulling the permits is so that they know you're finishing the space, so then they can tax you on the increased value of your house. And if you never sell your house, the government does still get money, and that goes towards paying for all sorts of things, the schools and the roads and things like that. And that makes sense to me. And I think, of course, people would rather not pay property taxes. And I think there are places that don't have property taxes, but places like Minnesota here, I think that's pretty much accepted.
Murderous. Yep.
Well, so, I think that people think that it's pretty much people accept it. They kind of say, oh, I wish my taxes didn't go up,
Of course.
But I don't think there's a huge outcry to eliminate the property tax.
No, not property taxes. No.
So, but fundamentally, isn't that sort of the same? Because I think the issue is that people it would be like, millionaires and billionaires buying up a bunch of real estate so that way that money never goes anywhere. Mm-hmm. But if they do that, they still are contributing to society by paying the property taxes on those, that property and those assets. So I guess why shouldn't there be something to act the same way for stocks?
Yeah. I guess it's interesting. And the one thing I'd have to look at is, does that mean, would it be only unrealized taxes for people making a certain amount? I may have seen if you make over 100 million, there's that unrealized tax added in, right? Mm-hmm. Why would you do it to me if I'm making pennies compared to these billionaires? You know what I mean? Yeah. So I would have to look into that further. However, I find it interesting that Mark Cuban is very much into endorsing Kamala, but anytime you get onto more taxes, he's like, no, which is, we've talked about in the past, that's kind of like the Democrats, go-to is taxes. You know what I mean? More taxes, you get more revenue, that kind of stuff. Minnesota had an $8 billion surplus 3 years ago because we're top 5 taxed people in the country. So, interesting.
Is that a good thing that we have that surplus? If we have all that money, and then what Tim Walz did was he passed things like free school lunches for everybody, which is something that I thought was pretty cool. I remember, dude, when I was in school, so many times, and it wasn't because like my parents wouldn't pay for it, but like I would just forget to like tell my parents, or I'd forget to bring the money to school. I would go through the lunch line and I would put my pin in and it would buzz. It'd be like, and then she would say, "Oh, well, you're $36 in debt."
Yeah.
I was like in third grade.
Here's
and
a
I
cheese
was in
sandwich.
debt.
Yeah.
Like, we'll let you have it this time, but they weren't legally obligated to because
They have to
I
feed
owed
you.
the school $36. No, eventually they would say, "No, you can't do it because you owe us too much money." And it's like, that's a weird system to go through. And like, I'm just a kid going to school, and if let's say my parents didn't have the money and it wasn't my fault, it was at the time, but let's say it was my parents just not paying, then like it's pretty bizarre that I have to go sit down and not eat.
Here's what I think. It's good and bad, and here's what I mean by that, okay? In all of presidential elections, like pretty much since frickin' Abraham Lincoln, okay, Minnesota has never voted Republican, ever. Even when Reagan won like 48 states, we and someone else voted blue, okay? My point to that is people get comfortable, okay? People get, imagine you got a check for $700 every 2 weeks. Government just gave you that. That's what you got. All good. And then all of a sudden, elections come around, and Tim Walz is like, yeah, if he gets elected, he's going to take that away from you. Which guy are you going to vote for? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, yes, I think it's great that, yes, kids that are starving and other things like that, yes. But to give everybody free lunches, I think it's one of those where Tim Walz, assuming he doesn't get reelected or whatever's going to happen with this presidential stuff, he can easily say, well, if my predecessor or whatever gets elected, he's going to take away free lunches. So you're not going to have it anymore. And right there, people are going to be like, wow, that sucks. Yeah. I mean, how many times you hear businesses right now are struggling to get people to come in just 3 times a week? You know why? Because ever since COVID hit, they're like, man, this home life this is legit. Like I don't want to go in. If I can do the same amount of work at home, why do I need to drive 20 miles to get the same paycheck and waste gas? People are comfortable, and that's a problem because now they're going to cause more issues. You know what I mean?
So, but I mean,
what are your thoughts on that?
Well, if somebody comes in and says, yeah, well, if I am elected, I'm going to get rid of the school lunches. I mean, obviously that would be a bad platform to run on because, I mean, we both live in Minnesota and we both are homeowners and we pay taxes, right?
Yep.
And I feel like we were still paying taxes even when things were good, like during the Trump times, right? Like when we were making good money and like groceries were affordable. Things are tough right now, but I don't think that's because of my property taxes. I don't know exactly what Minnesota is doing to cause us to basically be rich compared to every state, but it seems like things are fine. I'm not like in New York, for instance, like property taxes are like outrageous. And I don't feel like we're at that level. And if we're nowhere near that, right? Like we pay a reasonable amount of taxes, I feel like, for things like property taxes and my income taxes. Like I'm never mad at Minnesota every time I pay my property taxes. And like we just talked about off screen, I don't even get a tax return. I have to pay tens of thousands of dollars every time because I own my own business. And still, like, I'm generally fine with the amount that I have to pay. And if we're able to do that at that level while still being able to be wealthy, and then they're investing that back into us, like, I feel like that's fine. Now, if it's, well, we have to increase the amount that you're paying in order to still get that, well, then maybe that's more debatable. But I do feel like we're at a comfortable level for how much we pay. And if they're giving us that money back for things like that, I would also benefit from not having to pay for my daughter to go get lunch at school. It's not like they're just giving that money to poor people.
I wish, honestly, like, I wish it was more of a free system in the way of, like, we have this surplus, put a vote to it. Like, the House in Minnesota comes up with 10 things that this money could go to. Put a vote on the citizens of Minnesota. Where do you want, let's say, it doesn't need not all the $8 billion, but let's say they say 25% of this money is up for voting. where do you want out of this list of 10 things this money to go, this 25% of the $8 billion, okay? I would much prefer that than we're just going to decide where it goes, or send me a $50,000 check. That'd be freaking sweet. You know what I mean?
Like, well, okay, well, yeah.
Like,
so I mean, if they could literally just give us the money back, right? But that would be exactly like you just described, where it'd be like giving people money straight up, and you just described that as a problem. But like, I feel like if we already are in a deficit and they're not saying, hey, we'll give you $700 a month if you pay additional taxes, and then that would mean that for us people that are not poor, we have to pay a disproportionate amount more for equal gain as people that aren't contributing. Well, then you could make an argument that that's unfair. But if everything stays the same as they are now, they're like, hey, we have, how much did you say we're in surplus?
$8 billion.
So we are $8 billion in surplus.
Yeah. And
they're like, well, we can't think of what to do with the money, so we're just going to give it back to you. That would be like every other person in the country would be so jealous of that.
Tell them to elect or get it right. Like, be like, that's not our problem. Because that goes back to
but I'm saying within Minnesota, you just described that as like, that would be a bad move to just give people the money back. So, but why would that be?
No, I think that's a good move.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. Like, send me a check. You know what I mean? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, but before that, you were like saying, in comparison to the thing you said right after that was people that worked from home. They work from home and they get like complacent or lazy or whatever. You also said that was equal to the school lunches, and you said that's something that they're able to use as like, well, the guy that is going to run against me is going to take that away from you. The way I took you describing that was like that's almost like a dirty move to play.
Oh.
Like, we're just going to give people free money so they vote for me. But if they have $8 billion, like, they better give it back in some way.
Yeah.
Ideally, if they just gave it back to me, then great. But also, I think some of these things where they're saving me money by not having to buy my kid lunch is also good too. Like, don't you agree that's a good use of those funds?
For sure. I 100% agree that like you said, those funds need to go somewhere. I wish some of it would have came to a vote or something so we can have some control. Like, that is our money technically, right? Like, that money came from us. Like, all
Isn't
of,
there some,
so
I mean, again, I have never participated in like a local election, but isn't there some sort of process of introducing legislature in those types of bills? Like the bill that says that government pays for school lunch, wasn't there a vote somewhere on that?
Possibly, but when they do the bills or whatever you want to call it, a lot of that is on page like 560, right? So it's just thrown in the bill. It's like some of them may have not even known that was in the bill that they were voting on.
Right.
And I mean, I've had a congressperson tell me before, like, a lot of times if you want your thing thrown in there, you have to agree to the 99 other things that half of them you probably don't agree with, but you want your portion to be thrown in there.
Or more likely it was that was, they call it, this is the free school lunch bill, because that's something everybody's going to agree with, right?
Yeah.
But they might have had things in there that are less agreeable, and that I don't know. So, yeah, that could be the case, and I guess that's where it gets muddied up.
Yeah.
But I do think that there's something right there. But I do want to kind of go back to like the idea of these billionaires, because I just thought it was so interesting, because this is such like a public move, and there's always been celebrities that weigh in on politics, like, the Taylor Swift thing saying she endorses Kamala Harris. That's always happened. Anytime there's some big topic, a celebrity always weighs in. But I feel like the billionaire thing is relatively new, and like you look at the way that they present themselves. They really they want to be seen as relatable. That's ever since Steve Jobs. Yep. Like, he was the one that had the turtleneck and that iconic look.
The glasses,
even though the turtleneck was a designer thing, right? It was an intentional thing. And Mark Zuckerberg, he wears his regular T-shirt, but everybody kind of has their favorite billionaire. Like, if you ask anybody, they can probably think of a name, whether it's their personality or what they're doing. If you like Mark Zuckerberg, you're autistic, right? That's what that says about you. But then, like, if you like, Steve Jobs, then you're like a classic guy. It's kind of like a hack answer. It's
Yeah.
the same as saying, Megan Fox is like your celebrity crush. It's, you're a little bit behind the times,
Yeah.
but
07.
it's those Facebook tests where you can like, well, what's your, what Harry Potter character are you? Well, you could probably take one of those.
Yeah.
It tells you like, what billionaire are you? But that's what they want you to think. Sam Bankman-Fried, you know who that is?
No.
It's the guy, I forgot what his platform was called, but he was, in the last couple of years, he was found guilty of fraud because he had this cryptocurrency trading platform that he was running like with his girlfriend, and then they ended up getting found for fraud. And then it was this big public thing. You'd probably recognize him if you saw him. He's like a chubbier looking guy, and he's got like his crazy messy hair.
Okay.
He looks like he fucking smells bad, right? But it's an intentional thing.
Smells like cheese or something.
Yeah, that's what he looks like. He looks like a gooner, right? And so he intentionally chooses that look, and they do that to get us to like them, like celebrities. And I guess the first thing you said at the start of this podcast was he supports them. Mark Cuban supports Kamala Harris as a billionaire, like because she supports his interests as a billionaire. But why should we care about that? Like, there's no way his interests or even Elon Musk's interests are aligning with ours.
Sure.
So like people are using that as a reason why they might vote for Kamala Harris or Trump, depending on which billionaire they like better. But is that a valid reason?
Yeah, you ask a great question. I think a lot of what Democrats stand by is what they say, right? Is the little man. They're for the little man, the lower middle income taxes, right, and all this stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, then how come like every major organization supports Democrats? Like the Google CEO, Democratic. The Apple CEO, Democratic. Facebook, Democratic.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, wait a minute. Like, you guys are all for the Democrats, not to mention these Hollywood people that are worth maybe not billions, but hundreds of millions of dollars. Mm-hmm. You are also Democratic. So where is this line of like the middle income? Because as far as I know, now don't get me wrong, Trump is very rich. That's obvious. Now people need to know Kamala's rich too. Like this is
they're all rich.
They're all rich. But my point to this is, other than Elon, like I don't know of anyone who's openly for Trump. Like we talked about Kanye and like other singers, but I'm not. Yeah, like I'm not gonna take them seriously, right? Mm-hmm. But when you got Hollywood actors, Jimmy Kimmel, you got all the Tonight Show people, for Democrats. These people live in massive houses. They vote for everyone to have housing, but then they own a 7,000 square foot house, and they'll say, nope, not here. Like I support like having you guys houses, but don't come on my property. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's like, what is this? Yeah. What do you mean? What are you talking about?
And say what you want about Kanye West. Like, he's obviously a nutcase, but I trust that if he's endorsing Trump, that it is about what he actually believes.
Yes.
Because he does not care what you think about what he believes. He says some heinous, crazy shit. Believes crazy shit, but he really does believe it. That's actually his thoughts on what should happen, versus these billionaires that are supporting the Democrats and Kamala Harris. Like, I feel like it's more likely that they're all putting their what do you call it? They're throwing in with her for their financial interests more than they all just happen to be great souls that just happen to be rich.
Do you think Mark Cuban gives a shit about us? No, he don't give a shit about us. Not a chance. He don't give a shit about us. Like you said, all he cares about is money and making sure that everything's going to stay the same on his end, right? Mm-hmm. Which, again, I tell you, is Mark Cuban middle class? No, he ain't. He's far from it, but he's endorsing Kamala. Just saying, like, people like these millionaires and billionaires are endorsing Kamala. Constantly, Hollywood is all liberal. Yeah. SNL. I mean, you name it. They're all liberal. Like, bro, like, take a step back for a second. Like, like you look in, I know people make fun of them, but, like, look at people in Arkansas and, like, Louisiana and stuff. Like, Why are those guys freaking red? They're freaking poorer than no else, but they vote for Trump.
Yeah.
What does that tell you, dude? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, and people will say that it's because they're being tricked or whatever. But, what's interesting is the choice for Mark Cuban is way better than Elon Musk because he sounds way better speaking. He can really appeal. He sounds more like a normal guy. And again, it's all a mask. Okay, they're all evil. Like none of their interests align with yours.
No.
The only reason why you can agree with him maybe is because there's also a billionaire on the other side, in Elon Musk. And that guy, he's weird too. And he comes from a family of emerald miners who employ slaves. He would probably wear a Kylo Ren mask if it was socially acceptable. But
kind of sounds like him too,
Yeah, I mean, he's just an awkward guy. Yeah. So, there's billionaires on both sides, but it's weird that that's going to sway so many people. What's interesting about this election is I kind of realized this after the vice president debate, which we didn't talk about on the podcast, but
yes. Did you watch it?
I did watch it, yeah, and it was really good. That was way more of a presidential debate than anything that we've seen so far. Yes. And I like listening to those vice presidents, both of them, better than their respective presidential candidate. I was very but back when they announced Kamala Harris as like the presidential candidate, or who was going to be at the time the presidential candidate, I was talking about how she is kind of refreshing because she seems more presidential than Donald Trump and is sort of a return to how things used to be. I no longer am longing for that. I feel like this is it, guys. This is the most entertaining the most entertained you're going to be by a presidential election, and the most invested you're going to be for the rest of your life. We're never going to see anything like this again. It's an ensemble cast, like I said earlier, and there used to be one or two moments that presidents would throw in to like humanize themselves, like there was, I think it was Bill Clinton played like the saxophone, or like Arsenio Hall or something like that, right? Like Obama threw a 3-pointer shot. And these are the small moments that the rest of the campaign was all about policy and politics, and they do one thing that humanizes them. This time around, it's all stuff like that. There's no policy on either side.
No.
They all have like 2 or 3 talking points. None of them answer questions. It's all about the optics. We're gonna get your favorite billionaire. We're gonna get your favorite rapper who's gonna, who's gonna rap. We got Kid Rock.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris's husband did a stunt where he was ordering a burger at a fast food joint at Whataburger. Then Trump goes, what does he do? He says, I don't eat at McDonald's. I work at McDonald's. And he worked at McDonald's for a day. Did you see that?
I never saw that, dude.
Yeah, dude, look
Trump
it up later. Yeah, like in the last week, he got a job at McDonald's.
For a day.
Yeah, and he was serving people fries and shit.
Well, you know why? Because Kamala said she did, but there was never records that she actually did work.
Oh, that's right, yeah. And so it's but they're all just one-upping each other.
Yeah.
Like, Kamala Harris goes, we got Megan Thee Stallion, then fucking Donald Trump gets Sexy Red. Like, they just go back and forth, and Donald Trump one-upped them on this one. But it's all, the whole thing is just trying to pretend that you're more relatable than the other person, even though none of them have your best interests at heart. And so
it's true.
The next election is going to be super boring compared to this. I think we're going to have the highest election voter turnout this time around than ever before. And then the next time around, we just have a couple dorks running for office. There's going to be nobody that's engaged with that at all. And so it's an interesting move.
What I do find interesting is I know some people that lean more Democratic have said, well, part of the reason why the economy has been so bad is because we're still trying to get out from what Trump left us, is basically what they have said. And what is interesting to me is Trump was kind of handed a, I wouldn't say crappy economy when he came in 2016, but it wasn't great, especially the foreign policy stuff. And Trump came in, and within a year, the economy started to boom. Gas was at less than $2.20 a gallon here. Everything. The housing market was going up. And then after he left, it crashed, and people have been using that as his excuse. If Kamala gets, well, not if, I think she will get elected, and 4 years down the road, we're in the same or worser spot, I don't know how you can say Trump was the issue at that point. I'm sure they'll find another finger to point something to. But at some point, you can't be like, yeah, that was 8 years ago. Like, you can't, like, we have more homeless in the country than, whatever. So,
Yeah, well, then they can blame the war or whatever. There's always something to blame.
There's always something.
And that's the whole trick about it, is that they've been using that line forever, where it's like, well, it's actually the previous guy's fault. Obama inherited George Bush's shitty economy. He ruined everything, and Obama had to fix it. And then right when he got out of office, that's when Trump took over. Like, both sides use that. And the thing is that it is impossible to prove either way.
Yeah.
You can find studies from economists saying both are right and supporting both sides.
Correct.
And it just depends on wherever you go. So none of that really matters. And you shouldn't base your decision in a few weeks here based off of any facts like that.
No.
All that matters is which candidate passes your vibe check. That's where we're at.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's how I'm going to vote.
Pretty much, yeah. Well, I'll tell you right now, man. I'll tell you this. Here's the deal, okay? I think that at some point, okay, the Democrats, since I wasn't born yet, but since like the 60s, 50s, have been saying we're going to lower middle income taxes. And I want to know, since I have been working, which has been 15 years, when is that happening? Because when is this lower taxing thing happening? Because, does anyone ask, like, halfway through, like, hey, man, still getting taxed, same here, I don't know, can you give me a date here, like, what we're looking for? Well, that'll be the next president or the next 4 years. It's like, well, no, because it's been 60 years. So can we try and, like, can you point to where, like, the 0.5% went down? Or,
yeah,
'cause as far as I know, I'm paying more. Like, I'm paying more every year.
And then you have moves like Trump was just talking about. He's eliminating or giving people a break on taxes when they purchase a vehicle. And it's like, okay, great. That is actually a tax break because everybody owns a car. But then you have people that say, well, actually, it's not a tax break for the average person because the average person just takes a standard deduction and they don't itemize their deductions. And so for 99% of people, it's not actually going to save anybody any money. And it's just like a stunt. So it's just like, it's impossible to like anything that anybody does because there's always somebody that says, well, actually, it's not a good thing and it's all just a trick. And so, it is impossible to make an informed decision. Like, you just have to go off of whatever you feel. And I think who has that going for them is honestly Donald Trump because people at least know how they felt when he was in office last time. Mm-hmm. That is the number one biggest thing he has going for them. And I think that Kamala Harris came out really strong. She almost should have delayed her coup where she should have done that like right now, just before the election because her energy was at an all-time high. And right now, the energy is the policy, all right?
Yes.
And I thought for sure that she was going to win when everybody was so excited about her taking over and the media was really pushing her because the energy was so good. But then now that's really died down. And she's taking some interviews where she just kind of looks bad and, her optics are not the best right now. And then I feel like Donald Trump is kind of turning around. Like he realized that in 2016, when he was like this aggressive guy, like he doesn't have that persona anymore and he's trying to be taken more seriously. And I think that's working really good for him. Yeah. And I think that people are more outspokenly in support of him now than they were before. So if you had to bet right now, like who do you think is going to win?
Kamala.
Really? Okay. I think
Hands
Trump's
down.
going to win. Really? That's interesting.
I'm not, let's just say I think she's going to win. That's all I'm going to say.
That's really interesting, man.
Yeah.
Wow. I would have said that maybe a month ago, but I don't know, dude. I really think Trump's going to win.
What tells you that Trump's going to win?
Well, it's everything I just said where, like, I think that it is all about how people feel. It's the energy. It's impossible to, like, know what these people really stand for, right? We've watched all the debates. We don't know anything. We didn't get any information from the debates other than, like, who's goofier, right? That's all we know. I guess we'll see.
I hope I'm wrong.
Whoever loses.
I hope you're right.
You're going to.
You want to do a bet?
Yeah, the bet is just going to be if I win, then you have to buy B-dubs. And then vice versa.
Okay.
So that's it.
Fair enough. All right.
When is election day? I don't know what day that is.
November 4th or 5th, I believe, is
I got to make sure to go out and vote. And man, I might have to fucking leave the city that I live in because if it goes the wrong way, dude, things are going to get bad.
Dude, I'm telling you right now, there's too much going for Kamala, okay? There is a reason why she is not debating Trump again. Trump called for a second debate, and they said no because I think Trump would have some like counterpoints to bring up that she probably can't answer well, okay? So they stopped that. Now, like you said, the Fox thing, first of all, she knows Fox. Everyone knows Fox is right-leaning. So I don't really know like what her point was to go on there because they had an agenda to go into it. Like, no one can say they can't. It's the same thing if Trump goes on CNN. Like, it's the same thing. So I just think she's a female who is very likely going to be, I don't know who would be after this in 4 years. I don't know who would be the next up-and-coming female that would make it to a presidential election. I don't know yet. Someone could come up the ranks really quick. She's a female. She's as close as what Hillary Clinton was, except with a different career, I guess you could say. She was a prosecutor. She can say that, like I was for law enforcement and all that stuff, and go down that rabbit hole that I'm not going to get into. But I just think she has the right situations that people will just clamor to.
Well, I think that she has a lot of the things working against her that Hillary Clinton did. And honestly, it may be bad to say, but I think that the fact that she is a woman probably does work against her in a lot of things.
You think against her?
I think there's
Especially
a lot
nowadays.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of gender prejudice still, man. I mean,
you think
the
so?
fact that we've never had a woman leader, I mean, that is a big step. And I don't know if that's what really worked against Hillary, but I feel like Kamala Harris is just as unlikable as Hillary Clinton. Like, Kamala Harris she just seems like fake. Like, she presents better outwardly, but she just
Was Hillary
seems
Clinton
fake.
not fake, though?
Well, she was. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
So that's why she didn't win. People didn't like her.
Well, also,
but the only thing is that Hillary Clinton she was very close to the president, for a long time. I mean, she was up there in the ladder, right? Part of that dynasty. And so she was smart with politics, as people thought she was evil. Kamala Harris is also unlikable and sort of unrelatable as much as she tries to be, but she's also kind of dumb. Like, she's not a good speaker. And she...
like that video I sent you where she's like, there's not like a single soldier in like a war zone. And they're like, where the fuck are we?
Yeah, the soldiers
these soldiers are like in Afghanistan.
Right yeah, that. But I will say, both sides are full of shit. Okay, that's what I've gotten from this. You can call them all out on lies every single time. For sure. Okay, yep. So you can't choose based on which side's lying because they're both lying. And you can't choose based off of which president is a better speaker and answers questions better because they both don't answer questions and they both suck at conveying a point, right? And so you can't hold that against either one. But I think that when they had the strategy of just hiding her away whenever she was first announced. Like, there was all this hype, but she never took any interviews. The first time we heard her speak unscripted was the debate. Didn't go, like, terribly, maybe it was like 50-50. You could say either person won the debate. But then after that, you can tell that they weren't that happy with it because then they started putting her out to all these interviews to start clarifying her points and, like, trying to get people on her side because I don't think that they got what they wanted out of that first debate. And so that's why they had to put her out to the public more. And I feel like the more she gets out there, the more it backfires. Like, it would have been better just to keep her hidden away and just, like, keep paying off the media to push her. She would have had a better chance. I think the more she talks, the less it works in her favor.
Well, B-Dubs is on the line.
So. Yeah, dude. That'll be interesting, bro.
I'll even throw one in better, dude.
Okay.
I'll do B-Dubs and, like, Dairy Queen or something.
All right. Yeah, sounds good. We'll do it.
Okay. Fair enough. All right.
So that's all I got to say about politics for today.
Yeah, So we were talking about Elon Musk a little bit with Trump. Speaking of Elon Musk, as most people do know, how he is a billionaire is one of his companies is Tesla. That's really what he started with, what really kind of boomed him into the space, right? SpaceX, all that other stuff. Well, the government's looking into Tesla. There was a fatal crash last year that happened that kind of started the probe into that. Basically questioning Tesla's technology, saying, hey, is this safe for people to be driving? Because if I want to take a nap and I plug in the GPS or address of Bemidji, which for those that don't know is like 4 hours north of here, 5 hours north, like I can't just fall asleep because I might die, right? Like I'd rather just self-drive. That's why I've always self-drive. I don't want to buy a Tesla. That's not, no, like I'm too nervous. I'm too anxious that something's going to go wrong and I'm not going to wake up from my nap. You know what I mean? What are your thoughts?
Well, I don't know what they plan to do against Tesla here. I mean, it seems like some people died, and the main reason was that there was weather conditions that affected the visibility in the cameras. And so really quick for people that don't really know how this stuff works, Tesla's self-driving vehicles are unique in the way that they actually scan the road. So traditionally, like all the other brands, they use either radar or what they call LiDAR, which is like lasers, right, in order to detect the environment and then have the computer make decisions based off of that. Radar is good because it's like quick, but it's not very detailed in like sensing the details of the environment, right? Whereas LiDAR is much more detailed. They can send out 500 lasers to get like every single angle of the environment, but it takes longer for the computers to compute and make decisions, which isn't the best when you have to make snap decisions as a driver. Elon Musk took a different approach where he said that those technologies aren't going anywhere. With the developments in AI, it's actually better to use cameras, the same sort of technology that you see in China or areas where they make heavy use of security cameras and face detection and things like that. That same sort of technology where they put cameras all over the Teslas and they use AI to make decisions based on that. The problem is that whenever you have heavy snow or rain, or I guess in one of the cases here, like a lot of dust in the air, the cameras aren't as visible and it can't make decisions, and somebody ended up getting hit. There was a situation where there was a car pulled over on the side of the road and the Tesla hit the car, and then a 70-year-old woman that was walking out of the car, and she ended up dying. So the government is like looking into their program basically, and I guess if they find that it's at fault, which I guess it obviously is, like it could be improved in that case. I don't know what they plan to do. It seems reasonable that they would look into it. I think that if you're putting people's lives on the line, I mean, the government should keep tabs on how safe the stuff is to make sure that they're doing the best job that they can. But this is going to be something that's going to be ongoing for a long time, because for a while now, we're going to have a combination of self-driving cars and human cars until one day they decide that you can't drive a car anymore, and it's all self-driving cars. It's probably going to operate much better because the variables will be much more linear, right, on the roads. The thing is that they're going to look at it like, how many deaths is this preventing? Self-driving cars, the more that we have on the road, how many less automotive deaths are we having on a yearly basis? But it's a new technology, and sometimes people are not comfortable with something new causing a death. Like if your child gets hit by a Tesla that's in self-driving mode, it's going to be hard to convince that person that, well, your child was actually 3 times more likely to die from a human driver if self-driving cars didn't exist. Well, they don't care about the overall statistic. They're going to be mad at Tesla and self-driving cars because that's what ended up hitting their kid, even if overall as a society it's safer. So it's going to be hard to get the public on board with this stuff because they're unfamiliar with it. Me personally, I don't even use cruise control. Like I just feel like I need 100% control. So it would be very difficult for me to place full faith into a car. Now, it gets blurry because they call it full self-driving mode. But then when deaths like this happen, they come out and they say, well, even in full self-driving mode, you need to be alert at all times as a driver. You're not supposed to just take a nap. You need to be ready to take control at any time. When does that cease to be the case? And it's like, if I had to have my hands on the wheel anyways, I might as well just drive.
Correct. Like, what's the point of full self-driving if I have to be ready to drive? That doesn't make sense.
And, I mean, could you even? I could not bring myself to take a nap in that scenario anyways. Like, I need to know what's going on. Like, I need the ability to take over. But some people, they're just way too trusting about it. Yeah. Like, I saw a video where somebody ordered an Uber, and they got in the Uber, and there was no driver. It just, so there's areas where an Uber will pick you up, and it's just a self-driving car.
I think California is starting to do that, like San Francisco area and stuff. They're testing out taxi cabs, which in this article I read, Elon Musk did say that he's trying to come out with a taxi cab, like self-driving, where there is no driver. So.
Yeah, and Uber has banked their future on the fact that that's going to be coming, and it seems inevitable.
Yes.
Especially as electric vehicles start to become more and more popular, like that's going to come. And the thing is that some areas do need to volunteer to be the testing grounds for these things. So Arizona is another state where a lot of this is happening. And, it's like, and I'm glad that that's the case because we need areas where this is very common and some people are going to die. But I do think that it is going to save lives ultimately. It's very sad for people that are the ones that get hit by the self-driving cars, and they might hate that technology for it, but I think it is a greater good. I mean, how could you argue that it's not?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we'll see. It could be like the Jetsons in the future, right? Like flying cars and stuff like that.
I swear that we were supposed to have flying cars by now. Like, don't you remember that being predicted in like school and things? I swear that I remember being in school and I saw a video like, the first flying car is being tested. And you're like, dude, that's coming. But like, yeah. I've not heard anything about that. No. And that just seems so far away, but it's just funny how you think that we're going to be so technologically advanced. We have to get through the self-driving cars before we get to the flying cars.
Well, don't they say that technology is like tripling every year or something like that? Like now we're into AI. Like AI, we've talked about this in a past episode.
Yeah.
AI is becoming more and more prevalent. Like you put in a Google search, first thing that pops up is an AI answer, and it'll give you like a bunch of stuff with it. Like that wasn't there 2 years ago.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That exploded. And that's one of those things where, yeah, you're right. I mean, it exponentially grows. Like I remember first hearing about ChatGPT, and like a week later, AI is everywhere. I saw this post on Reddit, and it basically was somebody just wondering what men found the most attractive. So they showed like 4 like GIFs of women just talking, and there was no sound. It was just like women talking to the camera, and then people would say like what one they found to be most attractive. And there was one of them that I like thought was the most attractive, and a part of it was just because like the mannerisms made you think that she looks like she has a good personality. Like number 4. Maybe is like objectively the most attractive, but she looks like an Instagram model and looks like she might be high maintenance. But the first one looks very nice. And I was like thinking about that, and then it hit me like, there's no sound here. Like this could easily be AI generated women. Mm-hmm. And like there's some level of attraction to all of these women, and I think that their personality is nice, but they literally could be not even real,
Yeah.
And so things are going to get very odd pretty soon here because the scams are about to be going crazy. Like now is the time to get into romance scams because it used to be like, oh come on, how could you fall for that? You never video chatted, you've never actually seen her before. Now you're going to be able to put a filter on and turn into a girl and scam people for all their money, and it's going to look 100% real.
Yeah. Yep. Well, so. Our third story is do you want to introduce it?
Sure, yeah. So here in Minnesota, in Woodbury, which is the town that I grew up in, and I don't know if you want to keep this in, but the school that you went to,
yeah.
So one of the school that you went to in high school, Woodbury High School, had a substitute teacher that I guess is a cop in Wisconsin.
Prescott.
In Prescott. And then whenever he's off duty, he also has a job as a substitute teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, he was doing a demonstration in class one day of the George Floyd murder. And so he had one kid come and sit on the ground, and he put his knee on his neck in order to demonstrate that the way that George Floyd was restrained is not actually the reason that he was killed. And then you get to hear the history of this guy, and this is the first time he was caught on camera. But he has a whole history of, like, if you read any of these articles, it gets more and more insane. Not only did he do that, but he would describe dead bodies that he sees at crime scenes to the children. He would, in great detail, describe sexual assaults that he's seen. He would talk about his gun collection, like, total nut job.
Yeah, it's not a good look. And, you know, the thing is even if this guy wasn't a cop, like, yes, the cop really does play a role into that. But, you know, why are we talking to children? I understand it's high school. Some people think that while they're 15, 16, 17, they're basically adults. It's like, well, they're still kids by law, right? Like, you shouldn't be talking to kids about dead bodies, okay? Like, some of that can get very graphic, and as cops, we're very descriptive, right? Like, I could put you in the room of a decomposing body that I had to deal with, and you could probably get as close to almost smelling it, right?
Yeah.
There's no need for that. There's no need. Now, I don't know, did it say what class? Was it like social studies? Like what?
I have no idea.
Okay, so even if the class is around some type of history or something like that, right? Like, George Floyd happened. It's unfortunate. Nobody should have to die. We all learn from it and we move on, right? Like, why are we using kids as not only bringing up a subject that is very touchy for people, still is, and probably will be for a long time. You look at Rodney King. You look at Rodney King. That dude was beat to shit, and I think there was a lawsuit. I think like 4 cops got sued or something like that from there.
Yeah.
The cops that dealt with him that night. He got, just destroyed. And essentially, this is your everyday, like, or I should say current day, not everyday, your current day Rodney King, right? This is as most recent as we get to something like that. And what's interesting is you need to know that when you go into schools, you are being watched by kids. You are the role model, especially if they know you're a cop. Now, I don't know if he told them, like, I am a cop. It sounds like he did because he's talking about dead bodies and stuff. Mm-hmm. Right there, when you tell people you're a cop, you are on a different standard. There is no, like you're not a janitor. No offense. But, like, people are going to view your opinion differently when you're a cop compared to a janitor, right? Especially with high-profile deaths. So I think it's not. What are you doing, man? What are you doing? You know. Now he's on an IA at Prescott. He's on admin leave, which probably should be because what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, what? Can you imagine being the chief and he sits him down in his office and he's like, I can just see him being like, did you ask a kid to lay on the ground and then proceed to put your knee near his neck area and then tell all the kids about why you're defending Chauvin or, whatever? Like, I just can't imagine, like, what was going through your head there? What are you doing? You know what I mean? Yeah. Well, that's like bringing your service pistol and be like, hey, kids, here you go. Check it out. If you want to do a desk pop or something, let me know. Like,
he probably did that. Like,
what? Probably.
Like,
he probably was. Yeah,
like, right here.
Check this out. What are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
It's just idiotic. Like, it's just stupid.
Yeah, it is.
So,
I think he deserves what's coming to him. I disagree that this has, no place in school. I don't think it should be on the curriculum. It's pretty disturbing stuff. But, people always complain about how school doesn't teach some of the real applicable lessons to life. Like they don't teach you how to, get a credit card, have good credit, do good investments. And a lot of the stuff you learn that's like the book smarts isn't the kind of smarts that you need to be like a functioning adult. And I think that one of the most valuable lessons that they can teach in high school is that sometimes you're going to be a captive audience to a maniac. And you need to know how to deal with that.
Sure.
You might have a job and you're put under the management of a boss who takes every opportunity to let you know that income taxes aren't actually real and the government can't legally make you pay them. And you have to know how to navigate that. And you have to learn how to work with this person.
And call the IRS and be like, hey, you should look into this guy.
Yeah, the principal's not going to be able to save you every time.
No.
And so, some of these kids might have been traumatized by what he was saying. I'd hate to be the guy that actually had to pretend to be George Floyd in that scenario.
Yeah.
But I think that these kids are going to remember this for the rest of their lives.
I know.
And it's going to help them to navigate the nut jobs you're going to encounter in the everyday world.
Well, I mean, and I hate to say it, but it makes you wonder, what are some of these subs thinking? What's the background process on this? I mean, all subs, I'm sure, have to go through some type of, at least a quick background, right? Like a quick 2 or 3 day, we'll call you in 3 days and let you know if you're good to go, right? Make sure you're not a sex offender, the major things, But there's been stories of, kind of little side topic to this, but there's been stories of a sub teacher having kids fight in class, straight up closing the shades and being like, we're going to fist fight. What are you talking about? So that's what I mean. It's one thing if the topic's covered or if it's brought up, maybe one of the kids, like I said, I'm sure there's footage of it somewhere, right? There's got to be video. Some kid took a video of this happening. It's going to come out at some point. If a kid had asked about it and said hey, maybe it came up as if he's I know most subs are hey, I'm Mr. H, this is my background. I'm a cop in Wisconsin. Been doing that for so-and-so years. I decided to get my substitute teacher license because I like teaching kids your age, whatever. Maybe one of the kids was did you go to St. Paul or Minneapolis for the Floyd deal that happened a couple years back? Maybe that's how it started, and then he starts going down the rabbit hole, right? Because I even read in there too that he said that he can get away with killing someone.
Well, he said that cops would be the best criminals because they know the system and they know how to not get caught, and that's not wrong.
Sure, I think it's a bad look. I think it's the way I read that was he can get away with just murdering somebody, just straight up on his job and just get away with it. I will tell you that is not true. That's far
maybe
from
it's two different things he said, but I think he's just saying that if somebody was to get away with murder, that it would be a cop.
Sure. I mean, like you said, it's not necessarily wrong.
A
lot of, I know there have been psychology studies. So when you become a cop, you have to go through psych evals, right? And believe it or not, a lot of cops actually think very parallel to what criminals think. Really, the only difference that separates the two is the criminals will cave in to their needs or wants, whereas the police won't. So that's why police are so good at catching criminals, is because you think a lot like them, yeah, this is how I would victimize that person. Absolutely. And then you just think, well, maybe I should look into that, how they got victimized, and lo and behold, that's how that person did it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's more or less you just won't go through with it or enact with it. Now, again, that's not every cop. I'm just saying that in the past, studies have shown that cops and criminals are somewhat parallel. Not super close. I don't want people being cops are criminals and all this stuff, right? First of all, anyone can be a criminal. Anyone can break the law. But the point is, that's why their thought process are similar, is because they think in different aspects like that, which for people that are interested, our psych tests are insane. They're the first one you take is 320 questions. The next one is 560. So you take 2 of them. They're all multiple choice. I think there's some, it's been a while, but there's some where you have to write. But we're talking questions that are like go deep psyche, dude. Like the first question on there is, do you like to read mechanic magazines? Because serial killers answer yes to that answer more than not. So it starts taking you into this grouping based on how you answer your questions. Do you think your parents hate you? Do you hate your parents? Do you think the moon is white? Like stuff, dude, I'm serious, dude. And then after the fact, they take you into this room with the psychologist. And this is, your test will take typically, so after your first one, they give you a break. They usually give you like 10 to 15 minutes just to kind of like let your brain like relax. And they usually start with the shorter one first. So they'll say, here's the, whatever I said, the 320 or whatever it is. And then after that, take a 10, 15 minute break and then go back in. There will be a 560 booklet in there. Take that. And then after the fact, some departments, depending on where you go, will have you take a third test, which is like not an IQ test, but it's kind of a knowledge test. So it'll be like, it'll ask you, what's another word for small? And it'll say like minuscule and just like other words, and you have to pick the best one that would fit there to like check your English and stuff like that. Anyway, all departments do the first two for sure. After that's done, they send it through a machine and they give you basically what you see is like basically a circle, and it's like a pie graph, and each one's like sociopath, psychopath, all these other different like psychological problems, or like just normalcy too. Like there's other normal ones that I can't think of. And then it'll tell you like how much you scored in like each one, right? Essentially, now again, like I said, it's been a while, so it could have changed since I've done it. But after that's done, the psychologist will come in and they'll sit down with you and they'll be like, okay, they're like, so what'd you think of the tests? And oftentimes you'll be like, yep, took forever. And they'll usually chuckle or something. But depending on how you answered your questions, sometimes they'll ask you questions to see like what your reaction is. So, for example, they might ask someone like, if let's say somebody may have an anger problem or constructive criticism problem, right? Which they can see on the, like, dude, I'm telling you, it tells you everything about on this test. If you have a problem with constructive criticism or like people blaming you or guilting you, the psychologist might ask you like, hey, Zach, they'll be like, so, I see, you filled out all the questions on your test. Good job. What'd you think of it? Oh, it was great. Good. Tell me about like your family life and stuff like that. So they'll kind of like butter you up a little bit. And then after that, they'll be like, okay, I have a couple questions for you, and then we'll hopefully get you out of here. Now, these matter because depending on how you answer, they can fail you. Even if you passed the multiple choice, they can still fail you based on your answers that you verbally give them. And if they're like, if you worked at a previous department, they can say, I looked at your background while you were taking your tests, and it looks like your previous police department, there were a couple supervisors that said you just didn't fit in and that you had some issues with a lot of the people that you worked with. People were kind of talking behind your back and just said you were a bad partner. What are your thoughts on that? Like, and they'll be like, I have it right here in the background if you want to see it. And right there, they'll see how you react. They'll be like, okay, is he going to deflect it? Is he going to say, I can't control what other people think of me? Is he going to get super angry? Because they might be looking into that, because if your scores showed that you have problems with anger, they might be trying to prod you a little bit to see, are you going to have an outburst? Because if you are, that's going to go in your eval for the department to see. So it's very descriptive, dude. Like, it's nuts. It's crazy.
I would love to take a test like that.
Yeah, and you can. You can pay for it. It's called, I can't think of the name right now. I will send it to you after though. But you could probably pay to take them. You'd probably have to pay time for like a psychologist to like go through with it with you. But
depending on the cost of it, I think that'd be interesting. I'd like to it'd be cool to go over that here, like go over the report on the podcast, depending on how much that costs. But yeah, if you can find the name of that, send that to me. I think that'd be really interesting to take.
Yeah. So yeah, that's how they know, and that's how they'll say like not recommended.
Well, I know that in addition, I didn't know about that, but even just the background check. I remember you going through that, and you basically like reached out to me and you said, "Hey, man, you might get a call from my department, and they're gonna ask you like probably some weird questions. It could be anything, because I've known you my whole life, and essentially they might call literally anybody from your past to ask whatever questions,
ex-girlfriends." Stuff like
anybody,
that. Yep.
like people from school that you hadn't talked to, and you had to reach out to all these people and say, hey, you might get a call. So it seems very thorough. And so your question might be like, how did this guy that we're talking about in the story even pass this examination? But even the staffing agency that they went in and the department, they all did background checks on him, and I'm sure on paper he comes through clean. And on the psych eval, when he first got his job, he probably came back fine. But if you've been a police officer for 20, 30 years and you start to get jaded about certain things, and like when you're in that world, when something like George Floyd happens that is highly controversial and fundamentally changes the way that you have to operate in your job, and you have to change the way that you've been doing things for 20, 30 years, you're going to have strong opinions about that. And you can talk a certain way with your coworkers and the other officers, and they might agree with you, and you're sort of in that echo chamber. The people you hang out with in your adult life probably have similar views to you. But then when you go into a room full of high schoolers, you may forget that they're outside of that bubble, and they're not going to automatically agree with you. And he just did not read the room,
Read the room, dude.
Yeah, he has no ability to do that.
No, read the room, man. And so, and real quick too, like before we kind of get closer to the end here for us, I'll say this. A lot of people do not understand the rigmarole that you need to go through to get a job in law enforcement. I mean, it is a gauntlet. Like, I'll make it quick. First, you start out in high school, obviously you got to get decent grades. As far as Minnesota goes, can't speak about other states, but for Minnesota, you need to get a minimum 2-year degree. A lot of people have 4, but minimum 2, you get a 2-year degree. When you finish your 2-year degree, you go to the academy for a year. The academy, the first 6 months is all book work. So that's where you learn your law stuff. It's called theory. Laws, you'll do scenarios, figure out what charges fit where. It's kind of like, I would assume, like kind of like pre-lawyer stuff. Like reading this story, like what do you think the charges are going to be on this person? Then your second 6 months is what most people would deem fun. You go your driving school, your shooting tests, all that stuff. You have to pass all of that. If you don't, you have to retake the semester. Once you pass that, you get a certificate. Then you have to go and take what's called a post test, peace officer standardized test. Okay, it's basically like a teacher or nurse, you have to get a license to be a cop, right? So you go take this test. You have to pass that test. Then once you pass that test, you figure out, okay, where do I want to work? Right now, in Minnesota right now, they cannot seem to hire anybody, so that part's a little easier. But pre-Floyd, it was one spot for 200 to 300 people, so good luck. So getting an interview won't be as hard. However, you'll go into the interview, you better dress nice, you better have a suit, you better show up on time. If you don't show up on time, see ya. Like, unless somebody just died and you can prove it, that's why you were late, you're like at the bottom of the pile. Then you move on to the second round. If you're lucky, you'll move on to the third round. Great. You move on to that. Now you start backgrounds. You better hope to God that you didn't ultimately screw someone in your past that they're going to call and be like, yeah, what happened here? Well, they stole from me, but I never called the cops. interesting. So this person stole. It's not on their record, but something we're definitely probably going to talk to them about, if not disqualify them. So for those of you going into this, please think about what you're doing now that's going to affect you in the future. Then what will end up happening is you go through backgrounds. They call you up. They're like, yep, just got a couple questions. You'll meet up with the detective. They'll be like, yep, good. Makes sense. Understand it. Just had a couple questions on it. Boom. We're going to move you to the psych. Okay? You go to a psych. Each department looks for different answers on your psych. So the psychologist knows that. So if you answer high in a certain area, that'll disqualify you for this department, but it might keep you qualified for this department. Some people don't know that. So you better hope to God that you answer the way the department is looking for you to answer. You don't know. You just have to truthfully answer your test. Take your test. Hopefully you pass psych. Wait a week. Once you pass the psych, they'll call you up again and be like, all right, now it's your physical. Now you got to go in for a physical. Part of your physical is you got to run. You got to do all that stuff. You pass that. Now we'll call you back in about 2 weeks. Make sure you get all your stuff. Here's your hiring date. Come in, boom. First 2 weeks, admin stuff. You're sitting at your desk doing all your paperwork. I have about 20 passwords I have to remember for all these different websites I have to go into. You have to get into the BCA. You have to get a login for that. All the stuff, check people's backgrounds and stuff like that when you're running them in your squad car. Then after you pass all of those certifications, you're now on probation for a year. And you got to go through field training. If you screw up on field training, you're getting washed and you're out. And you have to explain that to your next department why you didn't make it through field training. If you don't make it off probation, which you could essentially fart in the wind wrong, and if a department doesn't like it, see ya, out the door. So people and that's the short version, people. So just understand that it means a lot for us to be in these jobs, and it takes a lot of freaking work. So just think about that when you're seeing cops.
I always think about that when I see the idea that they just hire anybody to be cops, because I know that they go through such a strict process to weed those people out. One thing that you mentioned was about how every department looks for different answers on that psych eval. Do you feel like people at your department, do you all have the same temperament? Can you feel the results of that?
So that's a great question. So a lot of those, the department is looking for, are you going to be the right fit? Now, when I tell you, and I've probably made it clear, these tests are very descriptive. After I take that test, that psychologist could pretty much tell me what I'm thinking throughout every day, pretty much. What stresses me out, what makes me relaxed, everything. They know what buttons they need to press for me to get upset about something or to be happy about something. They know me very well after I take those tests, okay? The department is looking for, obviously, one, that you aren't a psychopath or some other, major no-no, right? And then they really fine-tune it down to, okay, we want people to fit in this area as far as personality goes for our department, or what we think they would fit well with working around other people in this department. Goes into that. So that would be part of it, yes. Some people, like I said, some people wash out other places and get hired at the other place, answering the exact same way. It literally just depends on what specifically are they searching for that would help what they believe would be a good team camaraderie. And like I said, none of those oversee dangerous problems, right? Somebody who's going to be assaultive or not a good cop, right? They don't overlook that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, are they more humorous? Are they more, you know what I mean? More of the person, the fine-tuned personality.
I'm saying, do you, because you've been in the two departments, one you were a CSO and one you became an actual officer. But do you feel walking through your department that there's a certain type of officer there as far as personality, and then if you went to a different department, could you, just by interacting with the officers there, could you feel that, these guys have a different result on the tests than we do?
I guess we never really think about it because it was so long ago, but it's likely. Yeah, I could easily pick a handful of people that'd be they wouldn't be a good fit in this other department.
Yeah.
Just because of how things are run there, admin and stuff like that. So, yep.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, man. That was a good one. Let's wrap it up.
Awesome.
So thanks for watching. If you made it this far, subscribe. It's the best way to support us. We post the episode every Thursday and then shorts every day. Thanks for watching. Bye.